Welcome to Break the Loop. This is the place where shadows transform into personal power. Here we break the loop, shift timelines, and step into the highest version of ourselves. In episode 4, you learned how to track the shadow, how to recognize the emotional echo beneath your reactions, and how to identify the exact moment your patterns begin. Today we take the next step. Episode 5 is where awareness becomes transformation. In this chapter of your journey, you will learn how to break the loop in real time. Not later, not after the argument, not after the emotional crash, but right in the moment the shadow arises. This episode teaches you how to stop the old patterns the moment they activate and shift into a higher identity instantly. This is where the loop loses power. This is where your transformation begins to take shape in your daily life. This is the episode that changes everything. Breaking the loop does not mean you never get triggered again, never feel emotional again, or never experience discomfort again. That is not the goal. To break the loop means to interrupt the shadow identity before it becomes behavior. It means that when your emotional echo rises and your old pattern tries to take over, you create a space between the feeling and the reaction. In that space, you choose a new identity instead of slipping into an old one. Breaking the loop does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means noticing them without letting them hijack your behavior. It does not mean forcing yourself to be calm. It means consciously choosing who you become in the moment. Breaking the loop is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming aware. And awareness gives you the power to choose differently. When you understand that breaking the loop is about identity, not emotion, everything becomes easier. You do not break loops with willpower. You break them with consciousness. A loop needs one thing to survive: unconsciousness. When you don't notice the activation, when you let the emotional echo take over, when you slip into the shadow identity automatically, when you believe the narrative your mind creates, the loop continues. You don't continue the loop because you are weak or broken. You continue it because you don't see it happening. Loops live in the space where awareness has not yet arrived. But the moment you see the loop, its power collapses. The moment you become aware of the shadow stepping forward, the entire pattern destabilizes. Old behaviors lose their rhythm. Old thoughts fade. Old identities crumble. Consciousness dismantles the loop from the inside. You are not fighting the pattern, you are illuminating it. And nothing unconscious can survive the light of awareness. This is why shadow tracking matters. The moment you notice the loop, it is already weakening. There is a moment, usually between 3 and 5 seconds, after your shadow activates where you still have access to your higher self. This is the window of choice. Most people miss this window completely because the emotional echo rises so quickly that it feels impossible to interrupt. But once you learn to identify that shift, the tightening, the dropping, the spike, the heat, the contraction, you can learn to pause. In this pause, even if it lasts only a second, your entire timeline can change. The window appears right after activation but before behavior. It is the tiny pocket of consciousness where the loop hasn't fully taken over yet. If you can use those seconds wisely, even with one small intentional action, you will break loops that have controlled you for years. This 5-second window is the gateway to a higher identity. The first real-time loop-breaking method is the disruption breath. This is not a deep breath to calm yourself. This is not meditation. This is not trying to relax. This is a pattern interrupt. When your shadow activates, your breath becomes shallow and fast. Your body goes into survival mode. The disruption breath breaks that cycle. You take one steady inhale through the nose, and then a long, slow exhale through the mouth. As you exhale, you aim to feel your shoulders drop and your chest soften. This interrupt signals to the nervous system that the threat is not real. It is an emotional memory. This single intentional breath interrupts the automatic loop response. The shadow loses momentum. The emotional charge drops by even 5%, which is enough to shift you out of the shadow identity. The disruption breath is simple, but it changes everything because it gives your consciousness time to arrive. One of the most powerful ways to break a loop is to switch identities consciously. The shadow identity wants you to react the same way you reacted in the past. It wants to replay the emotional memory. But in the moment of activation, you can ask yourself, who is reacting right now, my shadow identity or my higher self identity? This single question breaks the illusion of the emotional narrative. It separates you from the story your shadow is trying to tell. When you ask, who do I choose to become in this moment? You activate a new timeline. Identity is stronger than emotion. Identity is stronger than memory. Identity is stronger than the loop. When you choose your higher self identity in the moment, the loop cannot continue. The pattern dissolves because the identity holding it in place is no longer active. This is one of the core transformational tools of the entire series. When you choose your identity consciously, you break generational patterns instantly. Every emotional loop has a story attached to it. When your shadow activates, your mind rushes to explain the sensation. It tells you that someone is ignoring you, rejecting you, disrespecting you, abandoning you, judging you, or harming you. But the truth is, most of the story is emotional memory wearing a new disguise. To break the narrative, you say internally, this sensation belongs to the past. This sentence collapses the loop's mental structure. The mind loses its grip on the narrative. The emotional charge weakens because the body no longer believes the story is about the present moment. The truth is, your shadow isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you from something that already happened. When you collapse the narrative, the shadow relaxes. And when the shadow relaxes, the loop dissolves. This method rewires the emotional brain at the deepest level. Your body holds the loop long before your mind does. When the shadow activates, your body contracts. Your shoulders rise, your chest tightens, your breath shortens, your posture closes. This is the physical shape of the loop. If your body stays in this position, the shadow identity stays in charge. To break the loop, you physically shift. You drop your shoulders, you release your jaw, you inhale into your belly, you uncross your arms, you sit up taller. You open your posture even if your emotions want to close. This body reposition tells your nervous system that you are safe enough to shift into a higher identity. This breaks the emotional momentum. The loop cannot continue without the body participating. When you change your posture, you change your state. When you change your state, you change your identity. When you change your identity, you change your timeline. There is a sentence that will become one of the most powerful tools in your transformation. It is simple, direct, and deeply effective. The sentence is, I see you, but I choose a higher timeline. This is the emotional mirror. It acknowledges the shadow without judging it. It recognizes the emotional echo without collapsing into it. It sees the old pattern without following it. It is the perfect balance between compassion and power. I see you brings awareness and acceptance. But I choose a higher timeline brings intention and identity. This sentence shifts your emotional frequency instantly. It opens a new path that did not exist seconds before. It tells your shadow that it is allowed to exist, but it is no longer allowed to lead. This is the sentence that breaks the loop at its core. When you break the loop in real time, a series of powerful shifts happen inside you. The emotional intensity drops. The nervous system begins to relax. The story in your mind dissolves. The old identity softens. The behavior you would normally fall into loses its grip. The situation becomes clearer. The body returns to presence. And most importantly, you reclaim choice. You become aware of the difference between your emotional past and your present reality. Instead of collapsing into the shadow identity, you step into your higher identity. This changes your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, your decisions, and your timeline. When you break the loop, you break the emotional cycle that has been repeating for years. You become the one who chooses the next chapter. You become the one who chooses who you are. This is emotional freedom. This is identity mastery. This is timeline shifting in real time. Let's see what breaking the loop looks like in a real moment. Imagine someone speaks to you with a tone you don't like. Your chest tightens. You feel defensive. The shadow identity being criticized rises. In that moment, you take a disruption breath. You tell yourself, this sensation belongs to the past. You check your identity and choose your higher self. You respond calmly instead of reacting. The loop breaks. Or imagine your partner takes a little longer to reply to a message. Your stomach drops. Your shadow identity of abandonment wakes up. You feel anxious, but then you catch the activation. You take the disruption breath. You say, "I see you, but I choose a higher timeline." The anxiety drops because the emotional echo is recognized. You shift your posture, breathe deeper, and the old pattern dissolves. Instead of reacting from fear, you respond from presence. These moments build your new timeline, one choice at a time. Every time you break a loop, you shift your timeline. When you choose a new response, you break the repetition of the past. You interrupt the emotional inheritance you've been carrying. You step into a new identity. You step into a new energetic frequency. You step into a higher emotional state. You step into a new timeline. Breaking the loop is not just emotional work. It is identity work. It is spiritual work. It is generational work. It is quantum work. It is timeline work. You are not just healing the shadow. You are becoming someone who no longer needs the shadow to lead. Every time you break the loop, you collapse an old timeline and choose a new one. This is how you rise. If you miss the loop, the pattern repeats. Not because you failed and not because you are weak, but because the emotional memory wants to be seen. Your shadow shows up in these moments because it is trying to protect you. The loop repeats because your nervous system believes the old story is still relevant. Missing the loop is not a failure. It is information. It shows you where you still feel unsafe. It shows you what still needs attention. It shows you what part of your identity still needs compassion. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Every missed loop becomes preparation for the next moment of awareness. Every repetition gives you a chance to track sooner. Every activation gives you a chance to break the loop next time. Compassion is part of the work. Now that you know how to break the loop in real time, you are ready for the next phase of transformation. In episode 6, we go even deeper. We explore how to rewire your patterns permanently so they don't return. You will learn how to reprogram the emotional echo, how to reshape the shadow identity, and how to install the new timeline as your default reality. Episode 6 builds on everything you've learned so far and brings your transformation into a whole new dimension. This concludes episode 5 of the Break the Loop, Shadow to Power series. You now understand how to interrupt your patterns in real time, how to breathe through activation, how to switch identities, how to collapse narratives, and how to shift your timeline through conscious choice. This episode is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. Until then, break the loop, shift the timeline, and become your higher self.